Hi everyone, Jenny Burke here. Welcome back to the Gentle Way of Hatha. Today I wanted to do a little bit of an origin story. So to explain how I got into yoga, became a yoga teacher, and just how business has kind of grown and expanded over the years. So I've mentioned before, I've been certified for over 20 years, teaching for over 20 years. But I started longer like even longer ago practicing yoga because I started when I was 16 or 17 due to a school project. And I'll get back to that. I wanted to start even further back with the sense of the origin story because I came to yoga through meditation and through some Eastern philosophy books that had mentioned yoga. So, yoga for me has always been more meditative, more of the reflecting inwards, more about the journey of the spiritual journey, growing yourself throughout life. And so, when I was about 14, I found a book called Good Company, and it was $2. It was on a discount rack downtown, and it was basically full of spiritual quotes, different spiritual masters over time. And I found it really, really interesting, really inspiring. A lot about living a peaceful life, karma, things like that. And shortly after that, I found a second book. It was only $1. It was at a used bookstore called the Bhagavad Gita. And that is a spiritual text that had been quoted in the other book that I had read. And so, of course, I had to have that and read that. And that's the one where I discovered the Om symbol. It's where it talked a little bit more about the spiritual journey of yoga. Um, and from there, I started to get into meditation. And so, again, I was probably about 15 or 16, and a little shop had opened up in Port Hope, and they were offering different energy healing circles and meditation circles. And so I started getting into that. And that was the real gateway into yoga for me. So, really having that personal experience of finding that inner peace, kind of letting go of the chaos around us. Life is always busy and wild. Um, and so, the books and then the meditative experience really shifted me. And then in high school in grade 12, we did something called the self-change project. So, we had to pick either a bad habit to stop or a new healthy habit to start. And for me, that was an opportunity to start taking or doing, practicing yoga, the physical stretches, the asanas. And at that time, there were no yoga classes in Port Hope or in my area. So this was maybe 1996, I want to say. And so I bought myself a book and I taught myself yoga, hatha yoga out of a book. And I was doing it twice a day. I was doing full sun salutations, cobras, lots of advanced stuff. I was young, I was flexible, was really, really into it. So I was doing it twice a day, every morning, every night for 2 weeks. And when the project was over, even though it was a really great experience, I didn't really plan on continuing doing yoga every day. To me, it felt more like an experiment. But after not doing it then for a couple days or a couple weeks, I was missing it and I was finding I felt different. And so I was slowly going back to just my own personal practice. And because there were no classes available in our area, other kids at school were asking if I could teach them, and then people I worked with were asking if I could teach them. And so I ended up doing just random little groups here and there, and everyone always just really enjoyed the classes. So I always was getting very positive feedback. And yet, it took me 7 years before I gained the confidence to become a certified teacher. Um, and I think that stems from the fact that I was self-taught, um, didn't really experience a lot of other teachers or how yoga was supposed to be taught. And so when I jumped into the yoga teacher training 7 years later, I did that in Ottawa at Rama Lotus. So I think that center has closed during COVID. A lot of centers closed down. But they were a yoga school. And so they did different 200-hour trainings, 500-hour trainings. I did the Hatha yoga. They also offered a Kundalini yoga, which I had considered because I'm very much into the energetic aspect of yoga. But I just thought I knew I wanted to make this into a business, and I felt that Hatha yoga was more accessible to most people. So that was the path I took. I won't get too much into details of the training, but it was extremely powerful, and definitely left knowing that I wanted this to be my full-time career and had visions of studio and teaching workshops and having other therapists doing different things within the studio space. But then when I came back to Port Hope, ironically, um, two yoga spaces had opened up. So one I did end up teaching out of. And this is kind of where the business journey begins. So 20 years ago. Um, and I was teaching at this lovely studio in Port Hope, multiple classes a week. I was doing workshops on weekends, and most studios take a percentage of your income. And so it was costing me a lot to be teaching out of this space. So I thought, I'm going to try doing smaller groups out of our home, my mom's home actually. And so we made her tiny living room into a yoga studio, and I could only fit 6 people in a class, but I did that for about 6 months, I think, under I had named my business Guru Heart Yoga, and I kept getting full classes, full classes, full classes. And I thought, I think I need to have a bigger space, my own space, not in my mother's living room. And so, a beautiful space opened up in Port Hope. And in the meantime, the other studios were weaning down, closing down. I ended up opening mine, and I transferred the name from Guru Heart Yoga to Crescent Moon Healing Arts. And Guru Heart Yoga, when I named it, the idea is um, yoga is the guru, so the spiritual teacher. And people started calling me the guru, and I was like, no, 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 that's not what I'm going for here. So it felt important to me to change that name pretty quickly. Although I do consider myself a spiritual guide, I do not consider myself a guru. And don't want followers following blindly. That's kind of what I envision when I think of gurus and followers. I just feel like I'm a guide. I'm here to help people explore their own spiritual path or journey. It might not be the same as mine. Anyways, so opened up Crescent Moon Healing Arts and had that for a few years with a variety of other teachers, therapists. We had art on the walls. It was an art gallery and a yoga studio. We had live music. We had musicians. It came a little community hub. It was really, really lovely for a few years, and that was very successful as well. And then I ended up closing the studio. I was pregnant. I ended up moving out west and was not out there very long before I came home again, just really wanting my community, my family. It just made the most sense. And had to rebuild the business kind of from scratch. So at this point, I'd already been teaching for probably about maybe 5 years, maybe a little longer. So I had a small clientele base that I could work with. And when I came back, I ended up teaching in my living room again, not in my mother's home, in my own home. But I also had a newborn baby. And it was intense to say the least, but I felt determined to continue on with this journey of yoga. I actually also went back to college full time, and did a 3-year advanced diploma in child and youth work. So I've also been working with children, as well as the yoga over the last few years. And Yeah, so the Gentle Way of Hatha came out of Crescent Moon Healing Arts because I was a registered yoga school with Yoga Alliance. And so I did a 200-hour teacher training. I did train two separate groups, small groups, just 6 people in each one. And those 200-hour yoga teacher trainings were done under Yoga Alliance as well. And so my unique perspective with yoga coming from sort of the spiritual, energetic, meditative side versus the physical stretches, exercises that most of us would know or recognize. When you design a training with Yoga Alliance, there's certain hours that are mandatory for each topic. So like anatomy, the asanas, the um, physiology. There's so many different things. But anyways, you end up with a few leftover hours. You can choose where to direct them. And so I chose to put those extra hours into the yoga philosophy. And I'm going to share, this is one of my favorite books, The Yoga Sutras of Patanjali. And this translation is by Alastair Shearer. And it's my favorite translation. I just find it really straightforward. And so we would spend our Sundays and we would just read the book, talk philosophy, and again, just explore and grow our minds just as much as the physical experience of yoga. So it was a really lovely, lovely time and experience. And so out of that, the Gentle Way of Hatha yoga teacher training, once I closed the studio, Crescent Moon Healing Arts, I chose to make that the name of the business. And that is still the name of the business today. And I ended up leaning towards the Gentle Way of Hatha because I hurt myself doing yoga. So when I was younger in my 20s and I was, t trying to touch my head, my feet to my head and doing these fancy moves and advanced stretches, I gave myself a hernia. And I have actually even since given myself another hernia, which is strange considering I'm so careful and so gentle. Um, but it was a real lesson in, yes, our bodies can be super flexible and do all these great things, but also the body can be fragile and we need to be moving with awareness and honoring what the body needs. And so that's really my main message when I teach yoga. And I always keep it gentle. We always have the basis of the pranayama, the breathing, and then we explore the stretches and the movements from that foundation. And now I'm at the point where I'm really trying to go full time into yoga, but I can only teach a certain amount of classes in person in Port Hope at the location I am at. And so I'm trying to gear the business more online, which is part of why I'm doing the YouTube videos. And so I've got a series of online workshops. I'm doing one a month. I have another video. I'll post the link below. So one online workshop a month, Friday evenings. We're doing a full moon meditation, a yoga nidra meditation, a journaling night, and oh, the chakras, which is the energy body. So I'm excited to do that one in November. And I'm also working on doing another teacher training, but it will be um, an additional teacher training. So I don't want to do another full 200-hour teacher training. I'm designing this more for people who already have their 200-hour training or more, and they're more interested in just having another modality added onto that. Or even for people who are just interested in learning more than just your weekly 1 hour class. You just want to do a little more in depth or understand why I design the classes the way I do because they are very specific and we follow a very similar routine each week, which you might think gets boring, but my goodness, sometimes our bodies week to week, they feel so different that even when you're doing similar stuff, it can feel different. So again, that body awareness piece is really, really important. And after that, I'm not sure where I'm going. I might consider doing a yoga conference at some point. So do the yoga manual, do another yoga teacher training, and just see how things unfold naturally over time. But I really want to keep going with the yoga. It would be amazing if I could do another 20 years as a full-time instructor. But if you have any questions, any concerns, any comments, feel free to leave them below. I feel like I have yammered on enough. But thank you for listening, and we'll be in touch. Namaste.